This video is sponsored by OWC. So I'm gonna try plugging it in because it actually didn't work by holding the power button. Maybe the battery is dead. If not, then I did something wrong, and that's extremely disappointing. Here we go. If you're one of those people who are advocating against the right to repair, which I totally agree with, you should have the right to repair your own device. Apple has granted you that wish. All you need is to rent this 35-pound box for $50 alongside this 40-something pound box, which shouldn't be that heavy, but I'm incredibly out of shape, and I actually have done this intro like 50,000 times, so I've been lifting it up and down for the last 30 minutes. But if you wanted to repair your own iPhone at home, you can do that. Here's all the equipment, and you can buy everything on Apple's self-service website. We actually did an entire video about Apple's self-service website. You can check that out by clicking the card here in the upper right corner. But in this video, I'm gonna show you what it's like to make a repair. Spoiler alert, it's probably not gonna go well because I'm terrible at these things, and my iPhone 12 mini does not need a new battery whatsoever, but for the sake of this video, we're gonna give it a new battery. So let's think of this video as a review of the Apple Service Repair Program and kind of just my general overview of my time trying to repair an iPhone myself. Now, for starters, I have never taken apart an iPhone before, or really any major electronic device, for the sole purpose of trying to fix it myself. That's not something that I would peg myself as particularly good at. I'm also one of those people who's actually pretty terrible at reading directions. I generally glance at things, assume I know how to do it, and then eventually have to fix mistakes because, well, I am dumb sometimes. And so that's kind of a flaw that I definitely need to work out, and it's not something you want to do when you're trying to repair a major electronic device. I've actually tried incredibly hard to follow the instructions the best I could for this, but of course I did glance over a couple of minor details, like, you know, when it says to remove all things from your iPhone, you should definitely take this pro tip into consideration. And make sure there's no screen protector on your device when you're trying to remove the display from the iPhone because, well, I didn't know that I had a screen protector on it, and I spent a long time trying to figure out why I couldn't actually get the display to come off. And so that's not a really good start. Also, I recommend just downloading the PDF from Apple's website and putting it on your iPad or Mac if you can, just to try to get it on a bigger screen so that you can see the images a little bit better, because you're gonna need to look at some references for sure. If you haven't seen my video on the repair service program launching last week, you can check it out here in the top right corner. But basically we did an overview of, you know, the website and how to check out and what you might need. And you'll need to visit this website to purchase the parts, and if you want to rent the equipment in order to make the repair a little bit easier. It's $50, but also note that it's going to be a $1,300 charge on your card until you return the kit. I actually bought a battery replacement kit, and I don't have any tools or anything that I would need to do this, so I picked up the rental kit. And what you get are two big Pelican cases, basically, filled with everything that you might need for the repair. And inside that, we had the battery press, the display press, the heated display removal fixture, and some boxes that contain things like, I don't know, these screws here, torque screws. Never used this before in my life. They're actually pretty cool, but they give you the little mini drill bits because the screws that are inside of a phone are tiny, and they're a nightmare to try not to lose. And that was just a whole thing in and of itself. So I removed the screws and spent what seemed like eternity trying to get the display removal machine thing to work properly. I also thought I cracked my display at one point. It turns out some piece of glass chipped somewhere and it fell on my display. I don't know where it was from, maybe the screen protector that I was trying to pull off. But I assumed my display was cracked, and I didn't try wiping it away because I was really bummed that we already got there at this point. But when I actually did try to wipe that area off, it turns out that that was not part of the display. It did scratch a little bit, but overall we're okay. The display is actually totally fine. After that, I used the tools to try to cut through all the adhesive, definitely going off script at times because I was getting frustrated at how hard this process was, but I did finally get it off. I unhooked all the cables and unscrewed the components that they told me to unscrew because they were just in the way of removing the battery. I just following the instructions here. I also want to point out that Apple tells you to put on heat-resistant gloves since the phone is all hot from being warmed up in the machine, and I assumed this would be in the toolkit, and it wasn't. Unless I'm blind or it's hiding somewhere, there are no gloves inside. And gloves are not the only things that Apple recommends you use and that are not inside the kit. They also reference ESD safe tweezers. I don't even know what those are, but I definitely had to go next door and buy what I can assume are not ESD safe tweezers from the dollar store in order to just kind of complete the rest of this repair. But once I had the display and all the components off and all the tools that I needed, now comes removing the battery. This is definitely not an easy process. I also need to mention again that doing all of this yourself is more money and a huge risk than it is to just take it to Apple. Maybe replacing multiple things at one time might be worth it, but just a single battery or display replacement is definitely cheaper and easier just to go through Apple themselves. Anyways, you need to remove all the adhesive that the battery is covered in, and this was the part that was nearly impossible. The adhesive would break off. I could no longer grab the adhesive without the help of tweezers, and I was afraid I was going to puncture the battery. I went off script again because Apple suggests that if you can't get the adhesive off and you can't see it anymore, to stop what you're doing and take it to the Apple store. And I said, never. I'm carrying on with this. I'm going to get this off whether I puncture the battery or not. I definitely don't recommend you do that. I actually watched an iFixit video and they recommend using rubbing alcohol to get the adhesive loose. So to be fair, Apple mentioned that you need some sort of rubbing alcohol or wipes, but I needed to get a syringe because I got that idea from the iFixit video in order to get rubbing alcohol underneath the battery without just pouring it on there. So I had to go to another store, buy a tiny needle, get a syringe, get some rubbing alcohol that I can easily inject into that small area behind the battery. I also thought I punctured the battery at least 30 times during this whole process, trying to lift it up, and they advise you not to do that with this tool, but I did it anyway. And eventually the adhesive did get loose enough for me to get it all off. It was definitely not the correct way to do this, but please be careful if you do this yourself. After that, you got to clean up all that adhesive, grab the replacement battery, stick that back in there, and then you come to the battery press machine and you got to use that machine to make sure it sticks to the back of your phone. And then you got to attach adhesive back to the frame of the device in order to get everything back together and get the display back. You got to hook up all the cables and components and everything. But that was actually a much easier process. The reassembly was much easier than taking it all apart. But once you do all of that, you'll go through the machine press, the battery press, and wait 30 seconds, make sure it's all there. If the adhesive is all good, you'll stick the display back on like I mentioned. And if everything is all good there, you'll put your phone back in the press one more time to make sure it's all sealed up, which mine seemed to be okay. So then we came to the moment of truth, and that's turning it on. So I'm gonna try plugging it in because it actually didn't work by holding the power button. Maybe the battery is dead. If not, then I did something wrong, and that's extremely disappointing. Here we go. Give me something, let's go! Let's go! Yes! Thankfully, I was able to get the phone to work. I have no idea how. For a second there, I definitely thought that I screwed something up because I tried to hold down the power button and it turns out the replacement battery was actually dead. And so yours might be too. Do not panic, just plug it in and you'll need to go through a system configuration process. But after that, everything works as it normally should. You'll see here, the phone works totally fine. I have no problems with it. It recognizes that there's a battery and it powers on and everything works. Overall, the repair process is certainly a lot easier with all of these tools that Apple gives you in that kit. Definitely having these machines compared to how iFixit does it without all of this stuff, it's gonna be a lot easier, but it's definitely not something I would recommend the average person to do. It's a tedious process that takes a lot of patience and a lot of time. It's incredibly more efficient and a heck of a lot easier to just go to Apple with something like a battery replacement or a display replacement. And it's not to mention a lot cheaper, especially if you have Apple Care, obviously let them do it. But even if you don't, it's still cheaper to have them do it. Apple does a great job of quickly sending you everything you need for this and labeling and organizing things. But ultimately it comes down to how well you can follow the instructions, how much patience you have, and whether or not you really want to risk your phone of further damage if you mess something up, which could basically mean you might have to buy a new one if you mess up things even more. So I highly recommend just letting them do it. That's what they can do. They're better at it. Or taking it into a local shop if that's what you want to do. But I would love to know your thoughts on all of this in the comments down. Now, before we end today's video, I do want to give you more information from today's sponsor, OWC. One thing I definitely wouldn't be getting directly from Apple is a Thunderbolt 4 cable, as the prices from the company is astronomical. Thankfully, OWC has you covered with 3 different sizes at 3 affordable price points. You can get a cable ranging anywhere from less than a meter to 2 meters in length, and for only $24 all the way up to $57. These cables are certified safe for 100-watt charging, up to 40 gigabytes per second in performance, and 100% compatible across all platforms, charging docks, displays, and other devices. For more information about these cables or anything else that OWC has to offer, visit the link in the description down below. This has been Dan with Mac Rumors. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you around in the next video.